Identification of goals must be SMART, S-M-A-R-T as an acronym. Where you are, where you want to be, how you have to get there. That's the essence of the financial plan. How is he going to achieve this? Because I can see the finances. Why is he not able to see the finances, right? Imagine you waking up every morning knowing that these are the 5 things that I have to achieve and these are the timelines in which I have to achieve them. And here's the plan. The growth of 80 lakhs will also become about 5.5 crores. So suddenly your 10 crore goal is met by 5.5 crores. Now the gap in reality is only about maybe just under 4 crores. The question is, how do you achieve 4 crores?
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Money Skills by Scripbox. I am Riney. I've been part of the Scripbox since 10 years now, or we can say it's ever since Scripbox has been there, I've been part of the Scripbox journey. Today we will be discussing in detail about financial planning. We have Anirudh, managing partner in Scripbox. Welcome Anirudh. Anirudh comes with 2 decades of experience in wealth management industry and has been helping over 350 families achieve their financial independence. Thank you so much again for coming to the show.
Thank you, Rini. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, Anirudh, what is financial planning?
Well, there are several definitions to it. I think the simplest one would be, from a financial planner's point of view, would be a situation where someone's looking at your entire financial history, being able to identify some goals and set out some sort of a plan for you to achieve that. Because most people have goals, usually categorized into short, medium, and long-term goals. So the financial planner looks at all of these and identifies, prioritizes them with you, and creates some sort of a document for you to act on.
Okay. So, assume I'm taking a financial plan. So, why should I consider taking a financial plan?
Well, let me ask you this question. I mean, when you look at yourself today, right, how confident are you that you're in a position that firstly, you know all of your goals, and secondly, you're in a position to achieve each one of them the way you've intended to in the time periods that you want them to? If the answer to that is, I'm not there entirely, or, I do other things in my life, but I'm not an expert in this. I think that is your single biggest cue as to why you need a financial plan, why you should opt for one, and why you should certainly work with a financial planner.
Okay. What are the factors that I need to consider while taking a financial plan?
So the financial plan is a very elaborate financial document. It's basically a synopsis of everything money for you, right? Some important characteristics that a planner will certainly work with you on would be the identification, and I'll try and do it in order of priority the way I've experienced it in my entire career, is identification and putting aside for emergency funds. We'll discuss this in a little bit in detail.
Sure.
Identification of goals, which is the whole premise of this exercise, right? Because I mean, it's financial planning, it's financial aspirations. When investments have to be made, what is the kind of risk tolerance that you have? What is the asset allocation, etc.? Because a lot of these goals are happening way into the future. Let's look at medium and long-term goals, 3, 5 years, 8 years and beyond. There is something which is called inflation, right? Inflation is a huge part of our lives,
Right.
Especially in a country like ours where we're constantly hampered with 6-7% inflation numbers. Imagine goals which are 10, 15, 20 years. Inflation is a big part of, making a plan for yourself, because the numbers today will not be the numbers tomorrow. And finally, implication of taxes, and let's not forget insurance. I think insurance is a huge part of financial planning, because the large part of what we do is, if we are alive to kind of fulfill each one of these aspirations, we're there, but what if we're not there? Our life still needs to go on for the people who are left behind. And that's why insurance is a big aspect.
So you mentioned a bit about asset allocation, right? One of the factors that needs to be considered. Can you tell us a bit about it? What is asset allocation and how is it important in a financial plan?
Well, let's look at it like this, right? There are broadly 4 asset classes. There's equity, there's debt, there's cash and gold, right? If you were to invest all your money in a single asset class, right, let's assume that to be equities, you would probably end up losing money in the short term, because equities tend to be volatile. If you are extremely conservative, and I've known several people in my life who don't move beyond fixed deposits, you'd probably just about beat inflation. And let's not even talk about taxation, because it's usually regressive when it comes to debt, fixed deposits and debt mutual funds. What you need is a combination of equity, debt, a little bit of gold also, to kind of marginalize hedging the equity risk, so as to speak, or the inflation risk. A combination of how much you should invest in each one of these asset classes is a good definition of asset allocation. In the context of the planning itself, you will have several goals. Some of them will be short term, medium term, long term. The longer term the goal, the more aggressive you can be in terms of an asset allocation from an equity skew.
Mm.
So let's say you've got a goal which is 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, away.
Suppose I want to create a financial plan for me and my family. What are some of the starting pointers that I need to have with a financial planner?
That's a great question. And for starters, you need a certified financial planner. Now, most people don't know this, but several people will have the ability and possibly even the expertise to talk about this subject because over time you get used to this. However, most people may not realize that there is a global education program called the Certified Financial Planner, which is promoted by the Financial Planning Standards Board in the US. It's a 6-module course. Someone who's enrolls to become a certified financial planner would need to give all of those modules and then become a certified financial planner as accredited by that board. And then you'll see them carry that designation forward as you would any other, like a CFA or one of those. That's, in my opinion, is your starting point because, if you are unwell, you go to a practicing doctor who studied medicine. You don't go and ask your neighbor what's your opinion. And that's why you need an expert. If you need that in your medical life, you certainly need that in your financial life as well. And that, in my opinion, is a good starting point for you.
So, once I've found the certified financial planner, what are some of the steps involved in the financial planning process?
Right. So, like I said, because there is a FPSP standard exam and then there is the program, financial planners around the world will use pretty much the same steps, right? It's a 5 or 6-step process. Always must begin with identification of someone's goals. I mean, what is the purpose of doing a financial plan, right? Now, I have met, you said, 350 families. I've worked with them over so many years. And that's the starting point. You always ask them, what are some of the goals that you want to achieve, and I mean financial goals, right? You may not think of them in your normal course of life, right, because you're doing so many other things, but a planner invokes those thoughts in you. When I ask you pointed questions, what are some of the things that you want to do, it makes you think. So once you've been able to identify some of those goals, you need to put them in some sort of a sequence, right? Because not everything is going to be achievable today. So let's assume that that's the identification and sequencing. Once the planner has understood what your goals are, before he or she can do anything about it, it's important that he gathers all of this information from you, which is essentially very data which is private to you. What are your salaries? How much do you earn? What are you spending? Some of the exercises I have done have been elaborate to the point that I want to know, what are you spending on dog food? Because it's an expense, and it's not cheap. And you've got several other things like this happening. How much you spend on groceries, and you'll be surprised that people are in awe of the data that comes out just by asking the question, to the effect that sometimes they don't even know that they're spending this kind of money. Suddenly you remember things like, gym membership, or something else. But the amount of times you're eating out, the amount of movies that you're watching, shopping for gifts, anniversaries. So I need to know what you're earning and what you're spending, because income minus expenses is pretty much savings, right? So I know how much you're now saving at the end of every month, and then so on and so forth. An extension of that is, that's something which is routine, right? Income and expenses. Now, what are your assets and liabilities? If you're a certain age, you've gone through life and you've been able to create assets, right? You've been able to create assets. Some of them are locked in, like your employee provident fund and certain other things, and maybe homes and so on and so forth, gold, art. People all have all sorts of savings. It's important for the planner to understand what your assets and liabilities are. Liabilities are as important as assets because that's a complete outflow. You have to dispense that liability pretty much, preferably before you retire. Because who's going to fund the liability if there is no income coming? So you've got all of this information with you. The planner is now in step 3 is analyzing that data and creating some sort of recommendations basis the information, because now I have what goals you have, at what time, at what point in time they're happening. I know your income, etc., all those things. I know how much money is left at the end of the month, and now I make recommendations which are then presented back to the client, to the family, who can accept the recommendations as they are or choose to give their opinion, and I, again, like I've had instances where people have said that, you've allocated that insurance policy for my retirement, but it was really for my child's wedding, and suddenly now the client's getting involved, because how often do we really go back and look at financial decisions? But this is an activity that not only refreshes that, and that's part to your earlier question, why do I need the planning, right? But remember, Rini, that when you pay for an activity, you pay for someone's advice, right? So it's important that you accept that advice, right? But again, feel free to give it your opinion. And once you've obviously seen those recommendations, now you need to implement, which means you need to take action, because what's the point of having a plan and not implementing it? And the last step really is that once all of this is in action, you've got your plan, you've got a good vision, you even got your investments going, is when you review the progress and also periodically, because this is life we're talking about. Situations can change, several things can happen, a loss of a job, a new job, becoming a parent. You became one a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Imagine imagine having a plan 3 years ago and having a child and choosing to take an extended maternity. Now suddenly the dynamics of the plan will change, because now you don't have two salaries, you have one single salary coming in. So these reviews will help you adjust to life's situations, and the planner will obviously work with you on that.
Sure. So you mentioned about identifying goals as your first point, right? How do I identify my goal? Like, I have so many things on my mind, right? How do I prioritize and identify these are the things that I need to sort of do?
Yeah, again, like I said, step back and ask yourself, what are the important things, right, to you? So there is categorize goals in discretionary and non-discretionary. That's how I always advise the families that I work with. And in my experience, I've seen goals which are pretty much flabbergasted me. When I've met families and they've said that we'd like to buy a villa in Scotland. And then you wonder that you're thinking to yourself that how is he going to achieve this? Because I can see the finances. Why is he not able to see the finances, right? So that becomes not only a discretionary goal, but a highly unlikely to achieve goal, right? But it's a goal nevertheless, right? And if you don't hope to achieve something, then you will never be able to do anything about it. So what I always tell my clients is there's nothing called a bad goal. Keep everything that you want. Let's put a number value to it. Your number value. What do you think is the price of achieving that goal? When is it going to happen? Let me do the number crunching. Park it. Let's look at the more immediate goals. Let's look at children's education. Now that you're a mother, you have to prioritize that over possibly a villa in Scotland if that was your goal. But that doesn't mean that's a bad goal. Do it another time in your life, but keep it there. So discretionary, non-discretionary. And then obviously you'll be able to prioritize them. And believe me, your planner, it's his job. It's his or her job to help you see it rationally. Because as parents, including myself, I would be tempted to prioritize, let's say, my children and ignore everything else. It's a very Indian thing, right? And we've seen this, that they've constantly put that particular goal, the education of a child, above everything else. When you look at it from a very impartial manner, you say that, that is an important goal, but so is your retirement, because you're not growing younger. There is a possibility for you to be able to save for both, because in your case, if your daughter is only 2, she doesn't go to college until she's 18. That gives you 16 years, right? You don't need to plan for it in the next 5 years. You have a 16-year runway, and that's what a planner does.
Okay. What are some of the benefits of doing the financial planning exercise? You've detailed it, but yeah.
Well, let's look at it like this. What is the disadvantage of having a financial plan? I mean, would you not wake up knowing that you're on track? Look at financial planning activity as a motivator for you for spending correctly, for identifying your needs correctly, for not maybe, utilizing funds where they're not required. Be frugal, be proactive in taking these decisions. So in my opinion, that is the single biggest benefit, because the document keeps you on track. It is a living document.
Okay, let's move on. So tell me someone who has been the youngest client that you've done a financial plan, and his story or her story. How has it been?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many, but I think one that constantly comes to my mind is, and we lucked on this client, right? Because we used to work with the father. Once we progressed in our relationship with him, so he says, you should speak with my son. So that's how we got the reference of, because you'd find, I don't know how many 20-year-olds would walk up and say that I need a financial plan.
Yeah.
When we went and met him, and, he said, I have a salary, but I live with my parents, so I have no expenses. Really so. I'm not married. So, you talk about children, education. I'm not even married. I don't have any aspirations. So I don't know what to do. But you know what? I'm passionate about dogs. He owned 2 dogs. And he says, in a few years, I'd like to open a kennel, for strays. I think it is a remarkable goal, right? Like I said, if you don't have a goal, you can think of something that you're passionate about. In this instance, he was so passionate about this kennel goal that we kind of planned for it. It seemed awkward at the time because none of us had done any research. Because if you ask me back in the day, what does an IIM education or an IIT or an MBBS education cost? Because you've done it so many times in your life, you'd be able to throw numbers back immediately at clients that this is what it's going to cost you. But when someone says, what do you think a kennel will cost? And you said that I absolutely don't have the first idea what a kennel is going to cost. So we came up with a number and we obviously planned for it. But in a few years later, as we were planning for it, he got married. And when we went to revise his financial plan, his goals had changed. He now wanted to start saving for a family. They were very clear they'll have children early. They'll have 2 children. He says, even if the other one is not born, let's plan for it. So, life changes. You started from someone who was unmarried, vague goals, the way I saw it, very important goal for him. Achieved that, moved on to the next step of his life. So, there are several instances like this that, and I think that's the beauty of my job, right? That that you wake up to a new problem every day,
Every day.
and you help create solutions for people who are only dreaming them.
Yeah. So, do you feel that a financial plan would make people's life much more easier?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Imagine you waking up every morning knowing that these are the 5 things that I have to achieve, and these are the timelines in which I have to achieve them, and here's the plan for it. So you walk on that path. It's very, very clearly laid out.
Okay. Is there some methodology or something that we can follow using a financial plan?
Well, it's like I said, it's identification of goals, right? It has to start from there, because when you invest without a purpose, look at it like this: and you've got all this money, but you don't have a goal in mind. You invest without purpose. You need to ask yourself, what are the things I need to achieve? Let's take you as an example, right? Let's say you have a car which you've been driving for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, whatever that case may be. You want to buy a car in 3 years' time. It's a very specific objective, right? When I say to my clients, I said, define what your goals have to be like, the methodology that you speak about. The identification of goals must be SMART, S-M-A-R-T, as an acronym, right? Now let's understand what SMART is.
Sure.
Your goals have to be specific. I don't know what I want. It's hardly specific.
Yeah.
I want a car. You're halfway there, right? What kind of car do you want? So I want a Hyundai car. That's slightly more specific. I'd like a Verna or I'd like a Creta, right? And then this is what it costs. So now you've got some more specifics around what you want. That's the S bit of it. M, measurable. You know that you can achieve that, because you know what is it going to cost? How much money do you have? Is there a loan applicability to it? All of those things. Actionable, something you can do about it. Imagine being unemployed and having all these aspirations. Oh, I'm dreaming. It's just not actionable at this point in time, right? Realistic/relevant. Pick your R, right? The Scotland Villa. It's not a realistic goal because some of the other more life critical goals haven't been met. And T, time bound. When, right? So you need to be able to put some deadline to it. That's, in my opinion, the best way to look at this objectively, and do this for each one of your goals. I'd like to retire. When? How much money do I need? For how many years do I need to plan? What's the inflation adjusted amount? All of those things. There is a level of objectivity, but there's a level of detail. And I think when they come together, it's a very powerful, potent mixture. So, like I said, this activity has to be as important for you as the client, as well as it for me as the planner.
So, let's talk about emergencies, right? Like, how much do you think one should have set aside as an emergency fund or emergency bucket normally? Because that's important, right?
It's actually one of the things that I mentioned. I said in order of priority. If you remember, you asked me that question earlier in the show. I said emergency funds, or the calculation and keeping aside that money, I think, is the single most important aspect of that. Now, you'll hear several theories on this. It could be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Take your pick, but try and have at least 6 to 9 months of your absolute committed discretionary living expenses set aside in case there were to be an emergency. That's why an emergency fund, right? So let's say you lose your job, something else happens, you're not able to work, you choose to not go back to work. But it's also possible that when you start the financial planning activity today, you don't have any of that corpus because you've not thought of it like this.
Right.
You've got some fixed deposits lying here and there, and again, in your mind, it's not an emergency fund. You can build through that also. You can say that I'll take the next 9 to 12 months to build that. Reserve, because remember, once you're in the financial planning activity, then you also start to think about some of the other competing goals, right? An emergency goal is just one of them. So you can't ignore emergency goals. You can't prioritize only that because some of the other goals will now get affected. So, if you've got X amount of money left, to start parking a little bit towards this. Take 12 months to build that goal, but eventually build it.
Okay. So you talked about emergencies and percentage of money that you need to allocate for emergency. How big of a role does insurance play when it comes to emergencies?
Well, I mean, life is unpredictable, really. Anything can happen. I mean, and you don't have to die. Essentially, you can have a serious medical emergency. You can be bedridden. Anything can happen. And let's not forget COVID. Right? COVID happened in a very, very recent memory. And I'd like to take that as an example. So yeah, I do a lot of talks and presentations to all sorts of audiences. And while researching for one of my talks about 8 months to 1 year ago, I came across this absolutely astounding fact. The Employee Provident Fund, EPFO, right? Something that you and I both contribute to, as everyone knows, is a retirement savings product. We also know that money is locked in,
yes,
right? That money becomes available to you at the age of 60. Now, when COVID hit, not only were lives lost, but finances were drained. And this particular statistic, which was filed under RTI by a leading newspaper, the EPFO responded that money to the tune of 46,000 crores was dispensed back to holders within a 2-year window that they opened up. these are life savings. And by the way, 46,000 crores across 25 million claims. So while 46,000 crores is a number, look at the number of people who availed of that. And you're not counted twice, you're counted once. You may take the money twice, but the 25.2 million is 25.2 million unique individuals who have taken the money out. Now imagine you're retiring in 2 years and you are one of those people who've had the misfortune of pulling that money out. And you think to yourself that, what if I had medical insurance? What does medical insurance cost? Let's say at an age of 30, you can pay 7, 8,000, 10,000 rupees a year and get a 10, 12, 15 lakh cover. Why would you not opt for that? And, or just not opt for it at all and say that, what, nothing's going to happen to me. So if you don't have adequate cover, then your savings are coming out earlier than planned, because no one plans to drop dead today. You plan to retire, and then that's the purpose of financial planning, that you live till 80, 85, 90, whatever that number is. So you don't plan for something to happen today, but you must have mitigants in case something were to happen, and these products are available in the market.
So what if I already have an employer? Most companies provide employer insurance, right?
Yeah.
So in spite of that, does it mean that I have to have another health insurance, or how does it work?
No, I love this question, and when people ask me this question in seminars or talk shows that I do, I never shy away from giving my example. Ever since I started my career, I was always employed, right? I mentioned the two banks, I mentioned the financial planning company. Now, unfortunately, that company shut down in 2014 in India, right? And I had the opportunity to become an entrepreneur, right? So that was my last stint before merging my business with Scripbox. And when that move happened, you believe me, and I didn't have insurance of my own because I was from that school of thought that A, I'm young, 2, nothing will happen to me, and 3, I have employer insurance. Now, when that company shut down in 2014, it didn't strike me that I don't have insurance, and I just started my own business, and it still didn't strike me that. And because you're a small company, then you're not bound by law to provide any of these benefits. Like, under 20 people, you don't need provident fund, and similarly for employer-driven insurance. Now, I'm also a very avid runner. For as long as I've remembered, last 18, 20 years, I'm an athlete. I don't look like one anymore, but I'm an athlete nevertheless, because I do a lot of running. And with all of my running stints, I kind of injured my left knee way back in 2018. And when I had to get surgery done, I suddenly discovered I didn't have insurance, and I had to pay $180,000 out of pocket. Now, $180,000 is a lot of money to just produce from thin air, right? Yeah. So now I had to sell assets and, so on and so forth. So the thing about employer insurance is, in my case, something happened where the employer shut down the business or the company shut down and I chose not to take it. But imagine that you're working till the age of 60, but you will retire at some point in time. The employer insurance is not going to continue till your life expectancy, right? At that point in time, if you choose to take insurance at the age of 60 or as retirement, you have to be absolutely certain that from your age today until your age of retirement, nothing is going to happen to you. Because if anything happens to you, the insurance that is being provided by your employer today will cover you. But you can be rest assured that if it's a bad illness, you will probably not get insurance when you choose to take one independently from an insurance company, because they know that there is a pre-existing illness, and why should they take on the risk? They have to assume the risk if you're already a policyholder, but they don't have to take the risk if they know that there is an illness that you've contracted, right? So that's obviously one of the reasons that people never seem to think of medical insurance.
So it's all the more important that the sooner you take the health insurance, the better chances of you getting health insurance for a cheaper price.
Well, the thing about cheaper prices, your entry price will be cheaper, but health insurance typically will increase its premium with age, right? But what will also happen is that today policies have become expanded, right? As the markets have changed, the market dynamics have changed, the products have evolved. Today, you get no claim bonuses, right? Up till now, we've only heard of the term no claim bonus with regards to motor insurance, right? And what happens in that is the premium gets reduced in the subsequent year where you've not taken a claim. In the case of health insurance, the premium obviously doesn't go down or doesn't, it may go up actually, but certainly doesn't come down. What goes up is your cover. So for example, you have a 50 lakh rupee cover and you've had one no claim year.
So let's move on, right? Let's assume I'm somebody who's around 40 years of age and I want to retire by 60. Can you just help me through like what would be my retirement corpus and how just try to see how I'm just trying to understand how this works out, right?
Yeah, because we did speak about future goals, we spoke about inflation, and what we didn't talk about was how intimidating some of these numbers can get.
Yes.
So let's take this example, right? So let's say that at 40 years of age, wanting to work till 60, and what you didn't say is how long did you want to plan in your post-retirement. Let's assume that number to be 25 years. So life expectancy of 85. You need to ask this question in financial planning because you need to it's a number, right? I mean, you can plan till 90, 100. I've seen people plan till 100. I've seen people plan till 70 also. So let's assume 85 in this case. Now, let's assume you spend about a lakh 20 today. But that's not the number that will be the number when you retire at 60, right? Now, a lot of people, when we ask this question that would you like to maintain the same lifestyle, and you'd say that, you know what, I'd like to at least maintain the same lifestyle that I have today.
Yeah.
So if I'm spending a lakh and 20, I don't want to go back to 50,000. And I don't aspire to be at 200,000 also. But there are certain expenses that will go away, Rini. Children's education, some mortgages, etc. will go away. So let's assume your post-retirement corpus in present value is about a lakh today. In 20 years from now, with a 6% inflation number, if I do my math correctly, it should be about 3.2 lakhs a month, right? So 1 lakh a month in today will become 3.2 lakhs a month. Now, when you further calculate that for the next 25 years, you're looking at a corpus of about 10 crores for just retirement. That's the intimidating part, right? Because when you hear that number, and remember, this is one goal. You specifically spoke of retirement, but when you add the 5 other goals and you say that, you know what, 10 crores here, 3 crores here, I don't have 30 crores. This exercise is a waste of time for me, right?
Yeah.
But let me bring you back a little bit. Let me calm you down a little bit, right? So now you're 40. So let's work on the assumption that you also have some assets, right?
Yes.
You may have some fixed deposits. You may have some investments. You may have a provident fund. Let's say that you're starting corpus. And I think for anyone who's 40, rather well-to-do off, a 50, 60, 70, 80 lakh rupee savings across these 2 or 3 instruments is not a bad assumption to make. Now, remember that as you grow older, these investments are also growing in time.
Yes.
And there is a growth rate which is attributed to all of these investments. So this 70, 80 lakh rupees is also expected to grow, and at 6% fixed deposit, maybe 8.5% provident fund, and maybe at 12% on your equity investments, you will see that the growth of 80 lakhs will also become about 5.5 crores. So suddenly your 10 crore goal is met by 5.5 crores. Now the gap in reality is only about 3.5, maybe just under 4 crores. The question is, how do you achieve 4 crores? Now you are only 40, you want to retire at 60. At a 12% growth rate, you discount that back, all you need is about 40,000, 45,000 rupees a month in SIPs, in systematic investment plans. Do it diligently, and that number, like I said, if it grows at, there are hypotheticals to this. The money has to grow at 12%. But let's imagine it does, right? You will be surprised that with the 80 lakh corpus and a 45,000 rupees SIP, you are completely set for retirement at the inflated goal of 3.2 lakh rupees a month at a 25-year post-retirement life. Now, that's what I meant. You've asked this question a few times. Why do I need a financial plan? What is the essence to me? What is the essence to someone else? Knowing where you are, where you want to be, how you have to get there. That's the essence of the financial plan. Now, if I tell you that all you need is 45,000 rupees a month, I think in your mind and your heart, you'll say, you know what?
It seems pretty doable,
it's
right?
Possible.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it is doable. From the point that you said that 10 crore is the corpus that I need to build, and now it's achievable with just 45,000 rupees a month.
Yeah.
Seems relieving and doable.
And the other thing that will happen here is that you will now be very absolutely sure, or at least in your mind, you'll say, what, I certainly will never compromise on this 45,000 rupees worth of investment. Now, add that to a child's education, add that to something else. Suddenly, you'll see a lot of your discretionary expenses go down, or rather, your non-discretionary expenses go down. So your wasteful expenses like travel, shopping, you'll put them in abeyance. Continue to do them, but focus on the objectives in front of you.
What aspires you to be a financial planner?
Well, I didn't plan to be one. Like you said, I mean, 20 plus years in wealth management. My first 2 stints were with foreign banks. And I think in the early 2000s, in 2003, 4, when I joined my first bank, this was an alien concept. You know, people didn't talk about, I don't know how many bankers even do it today. It's still a very alien concept because there is this fixation towards, let's go sell a product, right? It works for several people. But along the way, I got an opportunity to work with an organization that was a financial planning organization. And it I was still doing the same thing. I was still making recommendations to clients and I was still helping them invest money. But this gave me a proper purpose. And it really, in my opinion, when I look back 10 years, 12 years of doing financial planning, I think I have so many families out there. You know, you become a part of a client's financial life. And believe me, when I say this with all humility, you know, when people call you up and say that, you know, my son's getting graduated and, you know, remember we parked money for him in 2012 and in 24 he's out of college, you know, and come home and celebrate. It's very gratifying as an experience to know that you've helped someone achieve their goals. And I think you go through life saying you can help one person do that. I think it's great. But when you can help 200-300 families and, you know, continuously do that and, you know, they depend on you and they rely on you. For me, that's my biggest motivator. When I wake up every morning and I know that what they want and, you know, how are they going to achieve it. And I work very hard with them to understand what they need and help achieve those goals goals with them. Because, like I said, if you get called to someone's wedding and she was 6 years old and now she's 25 years old, it's incredible. It's incredible. Trust is an integral part of this. It'll come with time, but you have to open your arms to trusting a financial planner.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Anirudh, once again for bringing us some valuable insights on financial planning and spending some time to discuss in details about these concepts. Appreciate your time. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Riney, for having me here. You've been an amazing host. Thank you so much.